Hello. So I wanted to try to make a more in-depth video on the TD6 map editor that released like 2 days ago, and I just wanted to put this out to help people that are trying to get more into making maps and are interested in it, but maybe having some issues with some of the certain mechanics that are in here. So I wanted to kind of give some tips and tricks and just kind of help explain things and maybe make it a little bit easier to make better looking and more interesting maps. The first thing I want to get into is the paths, because a problem that I see a lot is people making a lot of kinks inside of their paths, and also having very rough circles. So I wanted to kind of explain how to make these paths a little bit nicer looking using the nodes that they have. So for example, let's say I wanted to have a map that just goes across the center, but the very middle has a little loop-de-loop inside of it. So you kind of wanted something like this. So what you could do is try to layer this beneath this path, and then you can use these to basically change how strong the curve is to the next node. So the next node is this one, and so you can kind of see when I move this, it flattens out and stretches out the curve in different ways depending on the direction that's facing. So you want to be really careful if this is flipped this way, because what that will cause is this weird little flip in the path that doesn't look good at all. So you want to be sure to flip these the other way. And then to make this look a little bit nicer, I'm going to actually have this curved up and then just go ahead and change this to be like up this way so that it matches with this curve a little better. And it's very, very slight adjustments, and you can be sure to move this back and forth to better align it to where you want it to be. And then I'm going to not have this go so high so that it doesn't loop over itself. And then I'm going to stretch this a little bit that way, just so that the rock texture isn't quite as noticeably like cut there. You can still kind of tell here, but I think it's mostly fine. I might expand this out to be like slightly more circular, maybe add just another point here to flatten out that turn just a little bit more. The next tab I'll get into is the props. I highly recommend using all these rotational axes to your advantage, because you can do a lot of very creative stuff by clipping them into the ground and using certain parts of the prop that you usually wouldn't think of. You can also make very cool perspective art that I've seen people do. The most liked map right now is a different perspective of a in-game map, and looks very cool by using the rotation and scaling of objects to kind of trick the brain into thinking that you're looking down on a 3D plane instead of from up top. Another tip that I'll give is a lot of props have no bottoms to them. So let's say I grabbed like one of these trees and I scaled it up really big and I flipped it upside down. You can kind of see how the bottom of this is like open, and it doesn't have like a texture because you can just see right through it. The thing I wanted to showcase was that some of these actually do have a bottom to them and look really cool. Like this lamppost, for example, does not have a bottom to it, but the black colored lamppost has a really cool bottom to it and has a very unique texture that you can't normally see anywhere else. And I don't know, you could use this for some kind of cool decoration that not many people know of. So very, very, very cool. The bottom of these, for example, is just a dark purple tile, and you can make art out of this, or a custom path, or whatever you want, really. Yeah, mess around with these props and look at the bottoms of them and get unique shapes and textures that you can't normally find anywhere else. The next tip that I will give is to try to fill up space as much as you can without exceeding the theme of your map and also not making things too dense. So if I wanted to have a path running through the center of this, I'll just have a very, very simple path. Maybe I'll do that sine wave thing that I showed earlier. And, you know, I'll do a water map, let's say. So I'll do like, I'll do something like this. So something that would be cool for me to do here is maybe going into the rock tab and then just grabbing a bunch of these cool rocks and making my own custom ground for any land monkeys to be able to stand on top. So you can see, like, you know, if I scale both of these all the way up, these both kind of clip inside of each other and don't look good. So if I just slightly scale this down, now these look a little bit better and don't clip as much. And so I can freely just make my own custom grounds in different parts of the bottom here. I keep doing that one for some reason. And you know, now I have some like nice little rock formations here. They are a little bit bland. Not much is happening, so maybe I can grab, you know, this other rock of the same shape, but has this like grass growing on top of it. Maybe going for like a tropical theme, you could add some of these little vines over the top, like they're hanging over it. Maybe add some of this grass near the edges. I kind of like doubling up my grass because I think having both of the animations looks pretty nice. So maybe we could take that like that a little bit. You kind of just have to experiment and kind of see what works and what doesn't. Sometimes things don't go exactly where you want them to. But sometimes they do, and they look really nice. I did this kind of trick on one of my maps, where you could kind of clip some of these shrubs into the rock, or like have them sat on the edge. Something like this, for example. And then you get these nice, very dynamic animated bushes and leaves that stick out from the rocks and look really nice. And of course you could add, you know, some lily pads to the edges. I'd recommend scaling these down for the most part. They are quite large and you usually don't want them to be like that big. Sometimes maybe, but it does look a little weird occasionally. And so I'm kind of just building up off of my foundation and just slowly adding smaller and smaller details to each section. This isn't the only way that you can make stuff, but this is the way that I do it personally. I just find missing spots that I'm like, something nice could go here, especially if things have like unique colors that aren't seen anywhere else. Always very nice to add. You know, maybe we can add a little sunken boat in the water here by just rotating it down and then clipped into the water. I can also put these like really large platform rocks up at the top here to get some really nice cliff faces. And then of course you can apply the same stuff that I did down at the bottom up to these as well. But since they're so much larger, they might be a little bit harder to add a lot of these smaller details. So I would try to just fill up any empty spaces that might need some extra touches to it. You know, maybe I'll add some leaves there. And then maybe just a little bit of grass there. But, you know, maybe you could add some of these trees up at the top to fill in some space. Maybe like the cliff edge has a bunch of large trees growing up here. And this is just like some kind of waterway in the center of some canyony area, and that's why these have these large cliff faces and these big rocks. Since the middle of this also is now starting to look kind of empty, I want to grab some more of these rocks from the bottom, and it would also help a bit with gameplay too, and just try to fill up the center area a bit. Maybe I'll try to get the flatter edge of this rock to there, and then just try to keep each rotation unique to have them fit in nice. You know, make that a little bit smaller so the edge of that's a little bit more clear. And there you go. You have a very nice basis for a map here already. And obviously you can do way more than this and have it look a lot better. Just trying to get a decent example out. You can make tons of custom assets by combining a lot of props and rotating them in unique ways. And my things look really nice. The next thing I'll show is these stamps. Since I'm making a watery map, this can be a little weird. I think one thing I'm going to do is switch this path to an invisible path and then make my own custom path using these stamps. I don't know how well this will go, but I can try this out. So one thing, for example, is maybe I can use some of these slightly transparent rocks, and these angles aren't quite what I want, so I'm just going to place them down until I get the angle that I want for these. Next thing I might do maybe is like some of this greenery around the edges. Maybe something like that. And then let's see, maybe a little bit of grass could look nice. Just as if it's some more greenery kind of growing around the side of the rock that you can't quite see that side. So it kind of just looks like it's connected to it. You could of course add some more of these rocks on like the edges of those cliff faces just to make sure they're not left out. And then these big shadows. I would recommend trying to mostly just use the edges of these shadows, and also almost always be sure to leave the randomize on when placing shadows, because if the edge of the shadow all looks the same, it looks quite bad because these are not like perfect circles or squares, and there's also some weird artifacting compression on the end of it, which will look very repetitive if you don't have randomize on. A better example would be if you look at the left side with this, because the left side is very kind of rectangular and compressed, so it starts to form a pattern that doesn't look very nice. Also, a good habit that I accidentally didn't do here would be to add a new layer and use this for your shadows. So I'm gonna actually do this real quick. Also maybe add small edges of the shadows here as well. So really try to outline these. Just a tiny little bit of shading. You don't want to overdo it and make things too dark, because if you make things too dark, it won't look very realistic. It won't look very good. I'm gonna use this smaller shadow just to fill in those smaller spots. Let's see. What else do we want to do here? Since this is a very unique centerpiece, I think this should be kind of the most detailed and interesting part of the map. Maybe I'll add some like of these growing along the edges of the rock. And then I love these leaves for the kind of jungly look. Also be sure to always rotate separate props. Like rotate and scale them differently when you're using a lot of the same kind of prop. Just to make sure that they're not super like copy and pasted looking. You know, maybe what I'll do is I'll put the boat up here as if it crashed into the rock. I'll be sure to remove this and add a new one. Kind of darken up that shadow just a little bit more. So this path, I believe, is pretty clear to tell where it goes because these arrows help a lot. And these stamps also are pretty great for showing where this goes. And like I said, you can place towers basically anywhere on top of here as long as there isn't any props blocking it. These grassed ones, you can't place anything on top of, and no, you can't make these removable yet. You can also place some towers on top of these platforms here. In most areas, these ones are a little bit buggy when you scale them up a bunch, but these ones are quite perfect and fit really well. And so yeah, this is a perfectly possible and pretty decently made map, made pretty quickly for you guys. You can easily name your map here. Please, beg of you, please name your maps. They don't have to be super creatively named, but I'm very tired of just seeing people's username and map. It's very boring. Also note that you can beat your map in any mode that you want to, and you can share a map every hour. So yeah, there's a relatively in-depth tutorial for the Bloons map maker. If you have any more specific questions, feel free to ask. If not, then I hope this helped you.